Right. I have another tool from my NASA data that I want to share today. This is a tool for getting data sets together for students. For some subjects, it takes a long time to find the data that you need and get it together. And this tool will hopefully save you some time with that for data that students are using both during classroom activities and assessments. And it's also a place that you can send students as they're investigating phenomena or trying to figure out answers to a problem or a question. This is a place that you could send them and they can start making some decisions about how to display data, what time period or what geographic region they need to collect the data from to be useful for the phenomenon they're investigating or the question that they're trying to answer. So if you go to My NASA Data, it is under the Visualize Data. There are a lot of tools here that are really cool. We're going to be looking at this one today. The Earth System Data Explorer is what it's called. You could also click on this button right here, access the MND data visualization. And this will open up this nice blank page that we can use. I'm going to show you just a couple of features. We're not going to go through everything, but I just want to show you basically two tools that I think will come in handy when you're using this with students. So to get started, we're going to pick the data that we want to use. So I'm going to, just for our example, pull up this long wave radiation data. So this is the amount of long wave radiation from the atmosphere to the surface of the Earth. So when you pull it up, it pulls up the map and you can see there's things we can start playing around with. So if I want to change the year or the month, I can. So if this was something that we wanted to look at how this changes over the course of 1 year, or to see if there have been changes over, the last 20 years, I could pull up different versions of this that way. I could also change the location that we're looking at. So this is one we probably want to look at the whole Earth. But if we were looking at something that maybe was more regional, we wanted some more regional data, we could do that. So we make all the changes to where we're looking in this little map up here. So I'm just going to tell it that we just want to look maybe closer to home. And then once I've made any change, I'm going to click this update chart button. And it'll update the chart so that we can see just that region. If you don't want to click that button every time you make a change, just click the box, and then every time you make a change, it'll just automatically update, which sometimes is really useful and sometimes is really annoying. So there's one thing we can do. So we can decide which part of the map we want to look at. We could also decide that we want to look at a graph instead of a map. And so this one I just picked over time, so we can see how the radiation has changed over time. Students could use this to look for patterns. Again, I could change the region, so it just kept us on that same region, but I could look at a different region. And since I have the update chart button checked, I don't have to click it every time, it just automatically updates. So we could compare different regions to each other. We could change the time scale here. So if we wanted to look at just 1 year and see what the pattern is there, we can. We could also look if we wanted to look over longitude or latitude. And so this is so if we look over latitude, you can see it just kept me in the same area, and it's showing me the change, the difference in this latitude for this month. Right. And so I could just keep it in that same location and see, does it change much over the course of the year? So there are a lot of different things that I could look at there. So I'm going to flip back to the map for the next couple tools that we're going to look at. So once I have my map and I want to get it to students, there are a couple ways I could do that. So one is I can use this link. If I send them this link, this is the link to this page. So they would open it in this page and they would be able to make changes. So if my students are in a place where I want to get them started, so I'm going to get them started with this particular map or graph, I could send them the link, but then they could start making decisions about, well, where do we want to look? What time period do we want to look over? Is displaying by a graph or a map a better choice for our question and the data set we're looking at? So that's one way you could do it. If you just want the a static image, there are two ways you can do that. One is to click this display. It'll open it up in another page, and you can just give them this link, and then it'll open this page where it's just a static image that they can't change. And if you want to print it, if you click here, it opens up in a file that, depending on what device you're working on, it might be easier to print from, or you could just print from the web page that we looked at a second ago. So if you wanted to print it or send it to students so that they're looking at a static image, you could do that. Another option is, for this one, I'm actually going to go back to our whole world map here. Is that we can, so another option is that you can make an animation. And so if you just click on this animate button, I've noticed sometimes this is grayed out, but if I refresh the page, it comes back. So I don't know what that's about. You can change some of these things. I'm just going to click OK. And then it opens up this tool that will basically pull, for this one, it's going to pull monthly data and make an animation. And so you can see I can change this time range. Right now it's just set up to go for the last 20 years. And so you'll be able to see that this takes a long time. So this makes really cool animations, but there's a couple of limitations. So one is just the time that it takes. So if you were going to use this in class, I would just get this going when you get to school in the morning, and then hopefully by the time you need it in first period, it's running and you can project it. The other limitation is that there's not an easy way to share this. So if you send the link to your students, it will open up this page, but it goes through this whole slow download process again. It doesn't just open up the animation ready to go. And if you try to save the image, it just saves one static frame, and so you don't see the animation. So my suggestion would be, actually, so you can see we're on frame 20 now, so we're getting to be about halfway through 2002. So we're like a year and a half into 20 years of data. I'm just going to click the stop download so you can see what it looks like. So for that year and a half, we can see from this animation how the long wave radiation has changed. So my suggestion would be that once you have the animation ready to go, that you just use like a screencast tool like Loom or Screencastify, and you just record it. And then that way, depending on the tool, you could get it to your students as either a GIF or a video that, you can embed that into Canvas or slides or wherever students can access it. So that would maybe be my workaround for using this. If anybody uses it and finds a better way to get this to students or to be able to use it without having to wait for it to download, I'd love to hear any suggestions on that. So that's the Animate tool. And it also works with the line graphs, so you can see how it changes. I think the maps maybe look a little better, a little easier to see what's going on sometimes. And then the other tool that I think is useful with students is this comparison tool. So if we go right here to this one chart, it'll let you compare up to 4 at a time. So if you were, printing or wanting to give students several different data sets, this is a quick way to do it so that they can compare them quickly. And so these all have the description here. I'm going to click this little annotation button just to take the description off for a minute so that we can see them. So there are a few different ways that we could use this to compare data. So one might be to compare the data over time. So we could look over, 20 years, we could change the years, or I'm actually just going to change the months here. And so we can see over the course of 1 year, how does the amount of radiation change? Right. And so now I have 4 graphs over 1 year, and we can start looking for changes or patterns that we might be able to use later. So that is one option. And again, if you're doing that and you want to, use the link and send your students to this page where they can modify things, you could, or if you use the display, it'll pull up all 4 maps. And so now they're on this one page that you could send students the link, or you could print it so they just have the static images. So that might be one option for comparing. Another option if you are using the time, if you're looking at differences in time, you can also use this difference mode. Oh, maybe it's going to do all three. Sometimes it'll only do two, but this tool will actually show you the difference. So when you open these up, you can see here's my first map, and then these, so you can see the key a little bit better. So this one is telling me this is from March to June, and it's showing me the differences. And then this one is from March to September. So this might be a useful way for students to analyze data as well. So I'm going to turn the difference mode off. I think another way that you can use this compare, where we've got several different maps up, is that we can actually change the data. So this first one, remember, we were looking at long wave radiation. So this might be one where students are actually answering some questions and thinking about, well, what could the effects of that long wave radiation be? And so maybe they start thinking about photosynthesis. And so we could pull up something that would tell us a little bit about photosynthesis. And let's look in summertime here. Summertime in the northern hemisphere, right? And I'm just going to set these to the same month, same year, so that we can look and start seeing if there's patterns. And so I could do this for several different years to see if there are patterns between those two, or I could keep pulling up different data sets. So maybe I want to see if long wave radiation coming into Earth's surface has any effect on the amount of snow and ice, right? So again, I'm going to make sure I have the same year and month so we can compare that data. Maybe I also want to see how it might affect sea surface temperature. I think that's one that's in here. And again, we're going to pull up the same year and month so that we can compare all of these. So this is another thing that we could get students to start thinking about. What data sets would I want to look at? What data is relevant? What time periods, what time of the year should I look at? Or you could use this to prepare data for assessments or class activities that students could use. And again, you could hit that display button and it would just pull up the maps that they can't change, but it has all of the information there. So I hope this tool is useful. Let me know if you have questions about it, or if you have been poking around in My NASA Data and looked at any of the other tools and have questions. I would love to think through how to use some of these tools.